Job hunting can be one of the most excruciating experiences in life. The wait, the self-doubt, the anticipation, the ghosting. It's hard for everyone, especially if they're starting out. But if on top of that, you are trying to find a job in a country where you just moved, this adds an additional layer of complication to the whole process. In this video, I want to give you some tips from my own experience having graduated as an architect in Morocco and navigating the job market in the UK in the last 8 years. I am not a career expert, but I hope you can find some useful advice in this video that you can apply if you're looking for a job right now. All right, let's do it. Tip number 1, identify the job title. As you know, and as we've talked about in previous videos, if you're an architect who qualified overseas, then when you move to the UK, you realize that your title is not recognized in this country. And so it can be very difficult to land a job as an architect. If you go to the RIBA's jobs website, you will see that there are a few categories of jobs that you can apply to. The one that is most relevant if you're coming from an architecture background and if you have limited work experience is architectural assistant. And this can be architectural assistant at part 1, so the equivalent to a bachelor's degree, or architectural assistant at part 2, the equivalent of a master's degree. From there, it's the most straightforward way to work your way up, especially if you want to convert your overseas diploma into the British equivalent. You can also look at other job titles that might be more relevant to you and to your individual experience, but my advice is to make sure that the job that you're applying to aligns with your career goals. Tip number 2, don't only rely on recruiters. Recruiters are those companies that connect an employer to a potential candidate, somebody seeking a job, and who get a commission in the process if this process is successful. I personally have nothing against recruiters. I know that some of my colleagues had positive experiences with recruiters, but I personally didn't. I've had recruiters in the past reach out to me and talk to me very enthusiastically about a position, only to not return my calls or just to drop it altogether. So my experience with them hasn't been great. Getting rejections or being ghosted by actual employers is hard enough. So I personally don't want to waste my time and energy and putting my life in the hands of somebody else who has a completely different agenda. I also know for a fact that some employers don't like recruiters and don't use them at all, so you don't want to narrow down your pool of opportunities by only relying on recruiters. So yes, you can talk to some if you want to, but don't only rely on them. Tip number 3, start locally. I would always start locally even if you're open to move, because employers seem to really value people who live locally. One of the reasons is that now that we're out of the pandemic, companies want people to come more and more into the office, and employees who are local and who have a short commute are more likely to come in the office more often. It's also that in the first few months of starting a new positions, many companies will want you to come in the office every day so that they can mentor you. It also makes the interview process easier and more organic because you can just pop in the office on short notice for an interview, and they can actually meet you and talk to you in person rather than organize an online meeting. So I would literally open Google Maps, type architects, and start going through the practices, starting from the ones that are closer to where I live or in the city center. Tip number 4, follow them on social media. So now that you have started identifying practices where you'd ideally like to work, I would recommend that you put them on a list by order of preference and follow them on social media. LinkedIn is potentially the best platform to do this, but I know that some other practices are more and more active on Instagram. The reason is that social media is more likely to be more current than the website. It's easier for companies to post things on social media. The website might not have been updated in months, but a LinkedIn post from 2 days ago might give you some valuable information about the company. As an example, a post about, say, recently securing a planning application for a 200-bed student accommodation can clearly indicate that the company might be very busy in the next few months and might need to recruit. It's also very common for a company to post open positions on LinkedIn before posting them on the website. So by following them on social media, you get that head start. Tip number 5, dive into their website. Sure, the website might not have been updated recently, and it's only a selection of the best projects that the company has been involved in, but it still can give you a good flavor of the company. The other 2 very important elements to gauge when you're looking at the website is first, the philosophy, and second, the diversity of the staff. The philosophy is, what does the company believe in and what are its values? Does it have a direction, a message? These are some signs that the company could potentially be a good workplace. The staff diversity and the profiles on the website could also give you a good indication if the company has had experience hiring people that are from different backgrounds, from different countries, and this could be a good sign that they might consider your application seriously. Tip number 6, watch out for red flags. One of the biggest red flags when a company advertises a job is saying something very vague about salaries and benefits. So they might say something along the lines of competitive salary based on experience, or excellent benefit package, but they don't actually say what that involves. It's even worse when they play dumb in interviews. One time during an interview, while we were talking about salaries, I mentioned that I wanted to be paid in line with the RIBA salary scales, and the person who was interviewing me said to me very confidently, "I don't know what those are." Well, you should. You're an employer. But all of these tactics have one objective: to play on your insecurities to underpay you. And when you're an architect qualified overseas, it's very common to be a little bit less confident in the beginning and accept anything just to get your foot in. My advice is to prioritize jobs where the salary and benefits are clearly stated and advertised. You deserve a fair pay like everyone else, no matter where you're coming from. Tip number 7, tailor the job application to the company. In my experience, it's really important not to just send 50 generic applications and hope for the best. Make sure you have a good selection of companies you genuinely want to work for, do your research on them, and tailor your CV, portfolio, and cover letter to the job and to the company. Mention specific projects they've done and that resonated with you, for example. If the company specializes in residential buildings, for example, make sure your portfolio showcases residential projects that you've worked on previously. An employer will appreciate a candidate who wants to work for them rather than just a candidate who is looking for a job. Tip number 8, don't hold back in your portfolio. I've seen some advice online that your portfolio should only be a snapshot of your work. The logic is that it's a hook that will make the potential employer want to see more. Honestly, personally, I would not hold back. A portfolio needs to show the very best of your work. Sure, make it concise. Employers, especially directors, don't have the time to go through countless pages of projects, but don't leave out valuable work in the hope that somebody will be curious enough to want to see more. It's a very competitive market out there, and salaries are usually some of the biggest overheads for a company. Usually when employers decide to employ new staff, it's a very busy time where they have no other choice but to get somebody else on board. They don't have time for games, so make sure that you put your best foot forward. You might just have 5 minutes of a director's time for them to actually decide if they want to call you in for an interview or not. So don't miss that chance. Tip number 9 is to identify your selling point and to use it. As we said, it's a very competitive market out there, and it can be very helpful if you have a particular selling point. Most architectural assistants who have gone through the traditional academic route won't have an additional qualification. On the other hand, overseas architects usually come to the UK and study an additional specialized master's program like the one that I did. If you have done so, make sure that you showcase it in your portfolio or in your CV and just talk about the added value that you would bring. Say you studied a more specialized degree in urban design. Make sure you target companies that do master planning because they will see the added value that you will bring. Same thing for sustainable design or interior design or project management and so on. Tip number 10, follow up and seek feedback. It's very common to follow up and seek feedback, and it's considered good practice. Not everyone will reply to your application, and these days feedback is a luxury. But as I said, directors can be very busy people. So even if they might be desperate for somebody to fill a position straight away, they might not have had the time yet to look at your application. That email can be a gentle reminder. I would usually wait about 2 weeks before I send a follow-up email. If you don't get a response then, fine, just drop it. There's no point in following that back. But the good ones will send you an email to tell you if they're still considering applications or if they're not considering you anymore for any kind of reason. This will hopefully give you that closure and will allow you to move on to the next applications without getting too hung up on the outcomes. You know you're chasing once in 2 weeks' time. You're not waiting and wondering, and you're getting back some control. So I want to share with you some final thoughts. The first one is this process is very tough, so don't get discouraged. It only takes that one company to give you your chance and get you that foot in. It usually requires you being at the right time, at the right place. So there's a big element of luck involved. Don't beat yourself up because you don't have enough experience. And also, equally, don't put people who have experience on a pedestal. Experience is just time spent on the job. Everybody can get experience if they get that chance. Focus on your strengths instead, some of which I'm sure are courage and resilience. It takes courage to move countries and to look for a job in your second or third language. It takes so much resilience to be constantly out of your comfort zone. You know you got this. Just don't give up and trust that it does get easier with time. If and when you decide to convert your overseas architect diploma into the British equivalent, make sure you watch the video up here where I explain the process more in detail. As for now, I wish you the very best of luck in your job hunt. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.